The Power of Pragmatic Passion. Take a listen. Nothing like having a brand new book in your hand that you can't wait to sink into. 7 common sense principles for achieving personal and professional success. This is a great conversation with a great man. I was glad and honored to be sitting across from him because he has so much passion. And he has so much excitement in his voice. Even though he's already done so much, he's excited to do more. That's the kind of people you have to love to be around. Man, this is a great conversation. Joe Battista, he lives by father, coach, mentor, dream big, keep it real, and get it done. That's his mantra, and I love it. I can't wait to read this book. And if you don't know what Joe has done, as far as in the area of Penn State University of Pennsylvania, this guy is somewhat of a legend. 30 years of coaching experience, 512 wins, 6 ACHA national titles with Penn State. He's a member of the American Collegiate Hockey Association Hall of Fame, Pennsylvania Sports Hall of Fame, Penn State Hockey Hall of Fame, the Penn Hills Hall of Fame. He also coached, he was the Vice President of Hockey and Business Administration for the Buffalo Sabres, for the NHL, from 2013 until 2015. He also secured during his administration the biggest donation in Penn State's history, $88 million gifted from Terry and Kim Pegula to build the Pegula Ice Arena and make Penn State hockey a Division I team. After he did all of that, in 2016, he became the man of pragmatic passion, dreaming big, keeping it real, and getting her done. I threw the getting her done in there because I felt like I had to. But he is now a consultant focusing on keynote and motivational speaking, success coaching, and business development. And once you hear him talk, you'll understand why. I really hope that you get a lot out of this conversation, or at least get as much out of it as I did, because I had so much fun talking to Joe, and I feel like he's going to be coming back in at some point in time. We got to dive even deeper, and we spend a lot of time together, so before we get him in there, listen, I got to shout out to one of my favorite sponsors ever, because I am totally obsessed right now with float tanks. What is a float tank? Well, it's like a sensory deprivation tank. It's a place where you can go to cut off all the senses and let your mind relax, let your mind go, and just, as it's called, a float tank, let your mind float. So you're floating in salt water, magnesium sulfate, which is very good for your skin, very good for your body. Some of the known claims for flotation therapy are promoting overall relaxation throughout the body, decreasing symptoms of anxiety and depression, lessening muscle and joint pain, improving sleep patterns. I can't talk about how great float therapy is enough. I'm 6 floats in, and from the first time I got in there until the last time I got out of there, it's been changing the way my brain works. And in ways that it's hard to describe. You have to experience it for yourself. I float at the LHTA Wellness Center in Evansburg, Pennsylvania. The LHTA Wellness Center. Check them out online, or you can call them up at 814-471-6871. If you're not from central Pennsylvania, listen, you can float anywhere. Just get your float on. Find a place near you. If you're in central PA, LHTA Wellness Center. Let's start the show.
This is Rob Z Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. Today with me is Joe Battista. Hello, sir.
What's happening, Rob?
Not too much. Thank you for being here today. I greatly appreciate it.
Oh, I'm glad to be here.
So this is going to be a great episode. It's a lot of motivation, a lot of inspiration, I think, is going to come out of this for a lot of people. Before we get rolling and really get deep into things, give people a brief background on your history, what you're all about, and what brought you to where you're at today.
Well, I'm originally from Pittsburgh. Went to school at Penn State, so I've been in this neck of the woods most of my career. I had a couple of stints out of state, but for the most part, I've been back here all this time. And wayward youth came to Penn State to be a nuclear engineer.
Wow!
And that lasted 2 years. And back then we called that pre-business, and so I switched into marketing. Got my degree. I was passionate about sports and obsessed with hockey as a kid, and I found I was fortunate, Rob, to find a counselor up at Penn State who halfway through my career up there took the time to get to know me, get to know what I was about, gave me some assessments, and then interpreted them for me, which is key. And I said, why don't you try to do something with hockey? Just do it on the business side. And, lo and behold, I got a job with the Pittsburgh Penguins right out of college. Matter of fact, I got the job before I completed my degree, and the Penguins back in that era were so bad that I was able to take a leave of absence and come back and finish my degree while the season was still going on. So I was in sales and marketing, but while I was there, I started coaching the junior Penguins pretty much by accident. The coach of the program left, got transferred. They asked me to come in and just take over on an interim basis, and 3 years later, I was still a coach. And it's at that point in my life when I decided, I really like coaching. My dad was a coach, and I thought, I'm going to give this a shot. So I left, went to graduate school at Kent State, was a grad assistant, and then I went up to Culver Military Academy out near Notre Dame in Indiana, and they have one of the top hockey programs for prep schools in the country. And then I got a very fortunate break in that Penn State decided to create a position for an assistant arena director and also the hockey coach for the club team there and run the summer hockey camps. And I got it, said I'd do it for 5 years, see if I could get the program up to Division I varsity status, and then if it didn't, I'd move on with my life. 27 years later, I was still there, and that was because we made the hockey camps a viable business. I was running 7 to 10 weeks of hockey camp every summer. Loved my job. I got married to a Penn State grad. We started a family, loved it, and then eventually I just got to a point where I was mid-40s and said, probably time for me to grow up, and we hadn't made progress to get it to the varsity level, and I was starting to say, okay, it's time. And lo and behold, I switched into athletic fundraising, and I got a chance to renew a friendship with a gentleman named Terry Pagula, and that was in 2005. And in 2010, Terry and his wife Kim gave us two different gifts that totaled $102 million. And
it's a nice gift.
Yeah,
those are a couple of nice gifts.
It worked out pretty good. And we built Pagula Ice Arena, and we transitioned the club hockey programs at Penn State to NCAA Division I for men and women. And I became an associate athletic director, did that for 3 years, and got to enjoy the new arena for about 3 weeks. And Mr. Pagula asked me to come up to Buffalo to work for the Buffalo Sabres, which he had bought in the interim there.
Jeez.
And I was a vice president of the Buffalo Sabres for a couple years at a 3-year contract. When it was over, I came back home and tried to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up. And that was part of what led me to write the book, quite frankly. So that was a long-winded answer to, get people to know. So I started, my first job was with the Pittsburgh Penguins. My last job was with the Buffalo Sabres. So in between there, I was at Penn State. And now I'm an entrepreneur, an author, published author. So how about that?
Well, I think that the long form of that's fantastic because it gives you an idea that these kind of things don't happen overnight.
No,
right?
they don't.
You don't just spit out a book because you haven't done anything, right? You got to have the experience put in and have all those experiences pile up to the amounts to an amazing story.
Well, I think so. I hope
That's
so.
The point, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to think that based on the sales of the book, because I self-published, and I know that they say most self-published books sell about 100 copies, and I'm closing in on 1,000 books sold, and and really just getting into it, and so far it's done what it was intended to do, and that's to get me more opportunities to speak. I am a professional speaker, and I do keynotes, I do workshops, I do one-on-one coaching, and the book has really been terrific to help. It's a lot easier than to send somebody a copy of the book than a business card and get credibility.
Yeah.
And so I'm talking to sports teams, which is a natural tie-in for me because I coach, but also businesses. I spoke to the EPA down in Washington, D.C. I've spoken to the college bookstore managers nationwide, Ameriprise, Remax. So I'm getting around to a lot of different places, and whether it's team building, it's personal and professional development. I do a program called the Margin of Excellence, which is really, again, these are across any age, gender. It doesn't matter, what type of industry. And then, given my background, I do a lot of stuff with team building, which is fun. I'm having a ball.
That's awesome. I think the cool part is, and I've heard this for many years, and it's very true, like going from sports to anything else, you can apply all the things that you learned in sports, all the discipline, all the work ethic, the team building aspects. That applies to everything else in your life. So if you really excel at that one thing, and I used to be a weightlifter, right? And I used to look at weightlifting like the same dedication that you have to that one thing, you can move to other areas of your life and excel at those as well, because to be high level in sports, you have to practice every single day. You've got to have a system down. You've got to have a morning routine. You've got to have rituals, right? So that kind of stuff carries on. I think a lot of people run into the issue. They leave their world where they have all of their knowledge and try something new, and they forget to take all that stuff they had and implement it, move it over with them.
All those, whether it's the character traits, whether it's the skills, the competencies, you may remember the old saying, no matter where you go, there you are, right?
I love that book.
And so if you think about it, why wouldn't you? So much of this does translate into another career, and as long as you have a set of core values and the skills that you have honed and mastered, they can translate into a lot of different things. And I think the bigger problem that most people have is they don't know what that is.
Right.
They don't take the time to really know what matters. And as I mentioned to you before we went on the air, I'm looking at, I'm a big believer that you write down your goals and you post them somewhere where you see them every day. And as I'm looking at you over your shoulder, I'm looking at your vision, your values, your goals, and I am impressed with that.
Thank you.
That's awesome that you do that.
I have a mentor who did that for me, right? Who had me, a few different people I've kind of learned that from. But for myself personally, I can recall many years ago my brother-in-law asking me what my goals were, and he would ask me what am I good at, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm good at, and it was kind of around that time that it dawned on me oh crap, that's not good to not know. You should know, and most people don't know. Most people
who
have
asks?
No idea, because nobody ever asked. There's not even a class in school that's asking you that question, and then once they ask you the question, there's a strategy to figuring that out. It's a process. It's not oh, I'm good at this, that's it.
Right.
No, you got to break it down. There's a great thing. It's like a four-piece. It's like a four-piece puzzle, and you put these four together, and it tells you what industry you should be in. And I love it because it worked really well for me. It was, what is something that other people tell you you're good at?
Mm-hmm.
What is something that, if it was a Saturday night and they gave you the opportunity to talk about whatever you wanted to, you'd pick this subject. What is something that you wanted to be when you were 14 years old? And the fourth piece of the puzzle, I always forget the fourth piece.
Can you get paid for it?
That's the important one, right? But usually if it's something that you're good at and you're passionate about, the money will come. That's what I've learned, is that it might be a more of a slow burn, a long-term kind of thing, like podcasting, for example. I love doing this because I just have a passion for it. Eventually it'll turn into something really big that I can make a lot of money off of, but in the meantime, I just enjoy doing it.
Right.
It's fun.
And you can tell, see, that your passion shows. And I think, you hear it in your voice, you see it in your body language, and I think that's the key is, this idea of finding your passion is maybe a little bit of a misnomer. It's creating your passion, taking what skills, what interests, what values you have, and then applying those things, like you said, in your four quadrant.
Yeah.
It's there is a process. There is a way to try to figure out what this is. And by the way, it doesn't always work the first time around for people. Part of this is exploration. And I really believe, because what I came up with in my book is 7 factors, and 2 of the ones that get kind of left out in the equation of where's your sweet spot, in my mind, are what quality of life do you desire and what stage of life you're in. I had the time to write this book because of where I was. Would I have done this 30 years ago? Well, I can tell you the answer is no. I wanted to write a book in the mid-'90s about the importance of the role of a team captain on any athletic team. And how do you pick a good captain? What responsibilities you have? And I did all this research, and there was very little material out there, yet everybody talks about the importance of leadership.
Yeah.
And there's sports teams from Little League and, bitty soccer all the way through the pros, and there was very little information. And I kept saying, I want to write a book about this. And that was in the mid-'90s. Well, here it is, 30 years later, I didn't do it. Well, Sam Walker did, and he's a writer for the Wall Street Journal that wrote a book called The Captain Class. And when I saw it, I was like, oh, doggone it, I wanted to do something like this. Well, guess what? Back in the mid-'90s, I wasn't ready. I didn't have the time. I didn't have the expertise. So stage of life does matter to a certain extent. And, this whole quality of life thing, I just have seen too many young people that they want this certain lifestyle, but then they aren't willing to do the things that it takes, the sacrifices, the becoming a master of a craft that allows you to get that. They want the lifestyle, but they don't necessarily want to do the work.
And if you got the lifestyle without doing all the work, it would all fall apart.
It's like winning the lottery, right? We know how that works out for a lot of people. When you haven't earned it, when you haven't gone through the rigors and the discipline, it's easy to fritter it all away, right? And so I really am a believer that when you go out and earn it, it matters that much more. And I do think that it comes back to, if all you're after in life are those material things, that's kind of sad in a way, because to me, it really is about family. It's about relationships. It's about friendships. Now, it's about achieving certain things as well. There's no doubt about that. And you know what? If you do all those things, typically the material things kind of come along.
Yes.
But to go after that, and that's all you have, because I talk about this in the book, that some of the most celebrated people, most successful people, when we look at the media, whether it's professional athletics, it's business, entertainment, they live some of the most tragic lives. And I think that gets back to they don't know what their values are. They really don't know what matters to them. They might have gotten a little lucky somewhere along the way. And then when they get that, you see, we know in sports, how many of them end up broke.
Yeah.
Because they never had the discipline. They never understood the value of that dollar. And it's easy for them to just, make impulsive decisions that end up leading them down the wrong path.
Yeah, it's so true. It happens time and time again. The actor Jim Carrey has this awesome quote. It's something along the lines of, I wish everybody would get everything they've ever wanted in life, to realize that's not the answer. Like, to realize you want all this fame and success and all this stuff, and then once you get there, you're like, oh, wait, that's not what the point was. That stuff's nice. It's temporary.
It is temporary. Right? It is. And that, by the way, that gets back to people who, like, their goal is, I just want to be happy.
Yeah.
Well, if it were that easy, right? And happiness is kind of a fluid emotion, correct? It's not, not every day is going to be championship day.
Yeah.
Right? Not every day do you get to be, the rock star on the stage.
Right.
Most days, for all of us, are the days we're grinding it out. And, it's the attitude that you take with you into each and every day that matters. Well, my son and I were talking about this earlier today, that, you just don't want to be around these negative Neds and Debbie Downers and people that are just, always talking about what other people have. And, does anybody want to be Like, really? You wake up in the morning and go, oh, yeah, I want to hang out with that person, right? Not too many people do. So it does matter what attitude you bring to everything you do. And
to sift your way through those people too, right? To like be able to realize, oh wait, this is not the right path. These aren't the right people to be around, because nobody really gives you that direction. That's not something that, I mean, hopefully you have parents that talk to you about that kind of stuff. I didn't really. My mom would let me kind of find my own friends, and she wouldn't have like approval or disapproval on them. Like I wish she would have, because looking back on it, I had some people that I never should have been hanging out with.
Well, it's good that you've realized that now.
Yeah, I wish it would have happened sooner, but whatever. That's how things work out.
Well,
but
it's
a good lesson to learn, I guess.
What it goes back to though is you needed that accountability partner, and that's something that also is lacking no matter where you go. Again, because I spent most of my career in athletics, the coach was the boss, right? The coach's boss was the athletic director. The players on the team, there was kind of a hierarchy, right? And you held each other accountable, right? Well, that doesn't happen all the time out in regular life. It doesn't happen in the offices. I find that athletes generally can handle getting feedback better than most people because they were used to it. Yeah. They wanted the coach to tell them, well, how do I get better? What do I need to work on? Yeah. And the coach usually wasn't afraid to tell them what it was.
In the harshest way possible.
And it's different. I get it. A lot of coaching is, it was, motivation through fear. But if you kind of peel the layers of the onion back, it still gets back to somebody was holding you accountable, right? So you need a coach. You need mentors, right? You talked about it earlier. We all need them. Too often, I think people think, well, I'm just going to figure out this all on my own. And today I find it interesting because there's more information, more knowledge at our fingertips than ever before. Yeah. That does not replace experience and wisdom. And that's why, it's easy to dismiss us old guys, and gals that, have gray hair and, you lived in the dinosaur age. What do you know? And it's like, well, don't ever dismiss.
Well, the classic things that work don't change, right? No matter how the technology changes, whatever comes along. I look at marketing the same way. It's like, people look at social media marketing as it's this whole brand new thing, but really it's just taking the old marketing practices and applying them to a new
different vehicle.
Yeah, different vehicle. The stuff that has worked since the days of Mad Men, like back in the 50s, it's not going to change. It's the same. Yeah, so it's so true, and especially with what I find. You mentioned the internet, right? You mentioned how much information is out there now, which is how I've gotten a lot of my knowledge that I've acquired over the past however many years. It's like, it's all there, and usually most of it's free. You can find most of it on YouTube without even have to pay any money besides for your phone and your internet connection. But people still won't take the time to go learn that stuff. It's like they want to just have it all of a sudden.
Well, and a piece that's missing is, okay, so when I am a big fan of a hybrid combination of utilizing the digital technology, but also having that live person that's there to bounce. Because you watch a YouTube, a TED Talk, a Goalcast, whatever it might be, listen to a podcast, you still don't have that vehicle to ask a question, get feedback, talk about some specifics, and sometimes it's easy, I think, when you listen to certain people, they give these generic answers, and it's the one size fits all. And what I've found is that's bad. You don't give the same medication to the same people for different ailments, right? If somebody's really struggling with a career and doesn't like their job, is crying themselves to sleep at night, kind of thing, the easy answer would be, well, then just quit that job. Well, right. Okay, but what if you got a mortgage to pay? What if you got student loans you're trying to pay off? They're again, you want to try to get away from that toxic environment, but there's got to be a plan. Yeah. There's a process. You don't by all these people that are out there just saying, just quit that, just go find what you love. Well, I still go back to what you love if it doesn't have an economic benefit to it, it's just a hobby.
Yeah.
It's not going to pay the bills. You can keep working at it, become a master at it, but that takes work.
Mm-hmm.
You in my
It's going to take time.
I talk about in my book. It's the third chapter. It's sacrifice. What are you willing? Okay, you figured out what you love. You think you're good at it. Are you willing to do the work? Are you willing to become a master at that in order to be able to make it economically viable for you and give you the quality of life you desire at a certain stage? Now, for some people, right now, people tend to look at things in that short term. Mm-hmm. They don't want to look at it in the 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 40 year. It's like, where do you see yourself? And I know that you, as we talked off the air, that you have somebody that talks about that. I'll hear people say, putting together a career map or a life plan is a waste of time because it's going to change. Well,
of course it's going to change.
Yeah,
but that's the point. You have to have you first have to have the plan, and then you're going to tweak it as time goes on.
Amen. But you still have to have an idea of where you're starting and where you want to end up. You're going to get detours. You're going to hit closed roads along the journey. But you just figure out, okay, I need a different vehicle, all right, in order to reach my goal, the goal I thought I wanted. Well, I'm going to have to go back and get a master's degree, or I'm going to have to get a certification, or I'm going to go have to study under somebody, whatever it might be. But rarely does something just fall into your lap. Right? I'm just not a believer that happens. Luck does favor the prepared. Mm-hmm. That's the point. It's if you've developed skills, you've created a good network, you've done the diligent part of it, then when that opportunity presents itself, right, you're ready to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
And that's the point.
That's what luck actually is. Winning the lottery would be luck, I guess, in the real sense, right? It's a random thing, you happen to win it. But when you're prepared for something, the opportunity pops up, people call that luck. Really, you've been preparing for that thing for years. They happen to line up at the right time.
That happened with Pagula Ice Arena at Penn State.
Yeah, it did.
Years. It did. There's a lot of people just, their attitude, the Pagulas came in, wrote us a check for $102 million. Boom, we had this,
right,
state-of-the-art, world-class facility.
But without you being there with that vision in place, right, and helping to piece that together and knowing the right people.
Absolutely. And that, that's the whole 8th chapter of the book, my book, the Power of Pragmatic Passion, that it talks about how, we got a little lucky, no doubt. Mm-hmm. But had Terry Pagula's son, Michael, not come to hockey camp at Penn State, and Terry not been a passionate hockey fan, and he and Kim not having passion for helping other people and passion for Penn State, this would have fallen apart. Our first conversation was in the fall of 2005. The gift didn't happen until the August of 2010, and a lot of things happened in there. It looked like it was going to happen, and then the market crashed in 2009, and it's like, wow, could the hockey gods be any more cruel, right? Get us that close, but it did. It happened. It's an amazing accomplishment. But then what I found was, okay, so here I am, when this took place, the building opens up. I'm 53 years old, and it was almost like, okay, now what? Mm-hmm. Okay, the dream came true. And I didn't realize at the time, but I didn't want to be an administrator. That's not me, and that's what I was becoming.
Yeah.
And I wanted the next challenge. I wanted to go on, and so what I found was, what was missing was a passion and a purpose, mm-hmm, right? And now, still needed to make money. I still had to put kids through college and pay the mortgage and that sort of thing. But I kind of reached that almost a pinnacle, right, where everything that I had worked for since the time I was 21 years old came true. And it's like, what's next?
Yeah.
And that's part of what inspired me again to write, because I can tell my own story that, when I went to the Buffalo Sabres, I was not I don't believe I was in over my head, but I was definitely out of my league. I did not understand the culture. There were too often times when I believed I was right, but I was not effective in the way I communicated the beliefs that I had and why they differed from some other people. And, sometimes when you're the coach, you're used to, okay, well, this is what I've decided. This is the way it's going to be. Well, that's not the way it worked. And, that was a learning experience for me. It was humbling, that, wow, like I don't have all the answers. I can sit back right now and say, you know what? I still believe I was right on most of the things I believed in. Didn't matter. I was not able to convince other people that we should have zigged when we zagged. And so that was humbling. And, realizing, all right, well, what do I do? And then I started to think, well, my wife has always said that my first best destiny was to coach, teach other people. I love teaching, instructing, helping other people find their, path. And so now I started to think about it. Well, okay, I'm not coaching hockey, but I'm back to coaching. I'm back to teaching.
And that can apply to anything.
Absolutely. And you know what? I'm having a ball. It's not easy, Rob, as you know, started being an entrepreneur. You don't have that steady paycheck. You have good months. You got other months, you got to be a little, worried, a little anxious. But I get up every day and feel like I've got a purpose and a mission, and I'm passionate about it. And that goes back to, okay, well, what really matters? What is it I'm trying to get? What do I value? What are the people in my life? I have a family now. When you're 21 years old and, most people at that point don't have families. Some do, I understand. But for the most part, I have an opportunity to do some things that I've always wanted to do, but I am still responsible for other people just other than myself. So that's a little bit of a limiting factor. And this gets back to having a process. You've got to factor those things in. And I think we all see the Zuckerbergs of the world and the Bezos of the world and, the people that guess what? There aren't a lot of them. No. For most of us, we're going to grind it out. All right? We're going to.
Well, they also did too. I mean, look at Jeff
no
Bezos.
doubt.
He was in his office in 99 or earlier building Amazon. I mean, just like the slow process of him building that thing, or 96 maybe, building Amazon, especially in those early years, or Facebook, same way. It's just, it looks like it all happened all of a sudden when it took those 10,000 hours were put in behind the scenes, and nobody really had a chance to see that. And
like in my era, it was beta versus VHS, right? Now you could look at like what happened to MySpace, right? They had the same idea, right? Yeah. Basically as Facebook. Why did Facebook survive and MySpace didn't? And the point there is that, there's always going to be successes and there's going to be failures, and that's how we deal with them. But the former CEO of Medtronic, Bill George, in his book True North, talks about how not everybody can be the CEO, not everybody can be the president, not everybody's gonna own their own company. There isn't enough room for them anyway, right? Not everybody, and I think people get this like, well, if I don't make it to CEO, if I don't own my own business, somehow you're a failure. Yeah. And that's a mindset. That gets back to attitude. And no, are you a good spouse? Are you a good parent? Are you a good person? Those things matter too. And too often, as I mentioned before, you've got people that we look at and say, wow, that person's really successful. And you find out they've pretty much botched up their personal lives, and they've lived
sacrifice for it.
And the Dalai Lama talks about how we spend all our time and our health to develop wealth, and then in the latter part of our lives we spend all that wealth to get back our health because we worked ourselves to the bone and forgot that there has to be some balance. And, you have to have physical, spiritual, mental, emotional, balance. And so, again, part of that is, what does success mean to you? It might be different than the way I measure it. And that I will always go back to, that's where we fail students in school, in college, in the vocational schools. No one asks anybody, well, what matters to you? What is it? How do you define success? And that takes time. It takes intentional, deliberate thought, and to me, it will come out better if you follow a process, if you have a coach, a mentor, an accountability partner of some sort that's going to help you along the way and get you over certain hurdles. We all need those things. And even with all that, there's still no guarantee, right? Because life throws curveballs at you. And, there's probably a lot of people out there that had great ideas, great entrepreneurship models, etc. Well, they just happened to pick it during the 2008-2009 financial crisis, right? I hope that they would stick with it and maybe resurrect it in a different form after the fact. That's perseverance, right?
Definitely.
So to me, it's all exciting, and just being able to be in a position now to want to help other people try to figure these things out, because it really, in the book I talk about, there's one guidance counselor to every 400 to 800 students in public high schools across the country. How are they going to help you?
I don't think I ever even went to see my guidance counselor once.
Okay, so I've heard that 1,000 times, Rob.
Yeah.
I ask kids that all the time, and you'll occasionally find the kid that had a great relationship, and normally what happens there is, you got a guidance counselor, a teacher, or a coach, some mentor, right, that took an interest in an individual, and that made all the difference.
Yeah.
Well, I am here to tell you, I am the most, I love to support our guidance counselors. I don't think we have enough of them. I don't think we give enough money to them. They are given an impossible task. I'm not criticizing the guidance counselor or the counseling staff. They simply, we as a society, do not put enough of an emphasis on that, because kids end up, we convinced an entire generation of kids that go to college, it's the only way to be successful, and it doesn't matter what college, it doesn't matter when, doesn't matter where, doesn't matter what major, and it doesn't matter how much money. And what we've created is a generation of 44 million people that owe $1.5 trillion in student loan debt. They've got mortgages and no home to show for it, because we convinced them that was the only. And meantime, we have this shortage of skilled labor because everybody bought into that. Everybody believed, and even the people in state education. Right?
Well, it was easy. It's a formula. It's a built formula. You go to school, you go to college. It's like, here's how you do it. That's simple. You don't have to think about it, right? You become an entrepreneur, you have to think about it. You have to think every day. It's like and once you turn that switch on, it's impossible to turn it off. So then you talk about the balance part of it. What I've noticed, and I'm sure you have too over the years, is just like, wow, whenever you start doing stuff on your own, it never ends. Like, there's never a point where, like, all right, I've got it done. Maybe when you have a job, you can, 5 o'clock comes around, I'm done for the day, I'll come back in tomorrow and start working again. But when you have your own thing, it's like, boy,
you don't want to go to sleep.
You don't want,
right?
Yeah, it's like, how
you
can I create
can't
more
wait
time?
to wake up because you're so excited. You have that passion for it, and again,
that's when you know you found the right thing.
And I always think, you ask somebody, okay, if you could make all this money, or you could do something you love every day, and it makes enough money. All right, it provides for the things, but you feel like you have a purpose. You feel like you're serving other people, etc. Who's the more successful person, right? Well, I think it depends on you. What matters to you? We tend in this consumer driven life, that was society that we live in. We measure people by how much they have in their checking account, what kind of a house they have, what kind of a car they drive, what kind of clothes they wear, etc.
Yeah.
And, there's a book, it's probably 15, 20 years old now, called The Millionaire Next Door. I don't know if you ever saw that or read it. Okay, so, the reality is, you got the people living over here that are wearing jeans and flannel shirts, cutting their own grass, driving the Chevy. They go on 1, maybe 2 vacations a year. And over here, they got the people putting the big addition on the house, driving the Mercedes Benz, flying all over the country, going to every vacation they want to. And people just assume that these people over here are the ones that got all the money, and they don't realize, they made a lot of money and they spent it all. Mm-hmm. They don't understand delayed gratification. They're not saving for the rainy day. And it's that person over there with the flannel shirt and the jeans and driving the Chevy that typically ends up being your true millionaire. Right? Not the person over here, when you add up their liabilities and take it away from their assets, they're actually in the negative.
Yeah, they blew through it.
They burned through credit cards and loans and owe more on their house and those sort of things. Well, again, to me, it gets back to there's some balance there, right? That I don't expect everybody to be the the millionaire next door lifestyle, but I think reality shows you that you better be prepared for that rainy day. You said it earlier. There's certain core principles that stand the test of time, right? There's a reason we have insurance, because you don't know when some disaster might strike. Well, that's the reason why you ought to have money in your bank account. The statistics I talk about in my book are kind of, they're distressing to me. They're alarming that, 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, and 70% of Americans have less than $1,000 cash in their savings account, and close to 60% of Americans have less than $10,000 saved for their retirement. Oh, the government will take care of me. Really? Yeah, you're willing to bet your future on that? And I just think that to me, it comes back to taking charge of your own life. Mm-hmm. Don't wait for other people.
And that's a hard. I mean, it's a hard for a number of different reasons, right? I mean, it's hard because we're not set up like that. There's the schooling system, but it's also hard because that's constant development that you have to work with, constantly getting better at something or refining it or practicing it. And a lot of the times, it's really hard unless you have somebody there to show you how to do that, to know how to do that. You don't know where to start. You don't know what's the most important part of it. You don't know what the next piece of the puzzle is. Like, how do you, I guess I want to ask you this, just from you, through your own history and from writing and creating this book, what is that process for you? I love that you talk about in your website about how you, when somebody graduates from high school, they should sit down with Coach Joe, and you help them to understand, what they're great at, what they excel at, and how to move forward. What is your process for that with somebody?
Well, it even should begin before that, quite frankly, really. Because I look at one of the things I talk about is, why are we not asking the 15, 16, 17-year-old kids to start writing down your values? Again, you're going to get the blank stares from the bulk of them. They're going to say, well, what's a value?
Yeah.
How do you do that? Well, you know what? We're going to introduce it to you, and we're going to start.
Are you doing this in like a group setting, personalized setting? How do you usually?
Yeah, I've done it both. Okay. I can do it one-on-one, small groups. We've spoken to entire high schools. One we did 9th through 12th grade, and then in other examples we would do like the 9th graders separate than the 10th graders, than the 11th graders, than the 12th graders. And then I've, again, spoken at vocational schools, at colleges, just because it's never, it's never too early or never too late to hear the message we're talking about, so that people will end up what you've got right over behind you, which is, what matters to you?
Yeah.
What is it? What are you good at? So.
Because then you can refer back to that.
Absolutely.
Whenever you feel like something's going wrong, you can refer to that and be like, am I lining up with where I'm supposed to be? That list has helped me so much. I looked at it last night and I made some notes on it because that's what happened to me. I looked at it and we were talking about personal assistants before we started, but like getting a personal assistant because there's things that I know need done that I'm not great at, that aren't in my wheelhouse, but I have to have somebody do them. And for me to do them will take 10 times longer than
Right.
somebody else who's really good
Well,
at that thing.
look at strength finders. Okay, they've got the Gallup. I think took that over now. But the bottom line is, aren't you better off spending your time on the things you're really good at and you like to do?
Yeah.
And then there's all these things over here. So, okay, a boss comes in and says, hey, Rob, you know what? You're really good at all this stuff, but you've got to improve your organizational skills, or you've got to improve your computer skills, And it's like, well, why is the mindset not, no, I could put significant time, energy, and money trying to develop those skills. It's something I don't enjoy doing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not very good at. Mm-hmm. Why don't I just hire somebody to do that, right?
Yeah.
And let's focus in on our strengths. And I see that happen a lot. I always talk about how we are horrible at training if you're working in a corporate setting, higher education, that sort of thing. We're horrible at training people how to give a semi-annual or annual evaluation, right? We're even worse training people how to receive one.
Right.
Matter of fact, I'll bet you very few places ever take the time to do that. So what typically happens? The person that is giving the evaluation isn't comfortable with it, doesn't know what they're doing. It ends up being a debate. It ends up being confrontational. The person that's on the receiving end gets all defensive, and they don't want to hear it. Well, okay, is this a surprise that it ended up that way?
Yeah.
So I still go back to clarity. What is, so we start working with 15, 16, 17, 18. Let's build this list of what are your values? What are your interests? What do you think you're good at? What do other people think you're good at?
It's amazing how hard of a question that is to answer, too, especially when you're younger. Like, what are you good at? It's like an alarming question. I don't know why.
Well, I'll give you a perfect example. So ask a 16-year-old at a tailgate at a Penn State football game. So what are you interested in? Well, I don't know. What are you passionate about? Nothing. All right, seriously, this is okay. So, well, what do you do with all your time? I don't know. Okay, look, come on. You woke up. Where are you spending time? Okay, we find out the kid likes video games. All right, well, there you go. Okay, that's an interest.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. We've broken through that barrier. Okay. Well, how much time are you spending on that? 5-6 hours a day. Okay. I'd say that's a passion. Yeah. All right. Now, is it the right place to spend your time and energy? Only you know that. What I've learned, and this is a lesson I've learned from my own son, who now works out in Silicon Valley, you don't judge the book by its cover. The skills that some of these gamers learn is no different than what we were talking about earlier with athletes. Mm-hmm. What do you learn by playing a video game? You learn pattern recognition. You learn scenario planning, situational awareness. You have tactical, strategic skills. You're communicating with people. You're working with other people. Yeah. And so to me, it's okay. So let's take that kid who mom and dad are mad at because they spend all their time down in the basement, up in their bedroom, and all they do is play video games. It's like, well, maybe we ought to just change our perspective. Let's change the frameworks. Okay, so we know you like to, all right, what parts of it do you like? Do you like the communicating with the other people? Well, no, I like to be on my own. I'm the sniper guy. Okay, well, that tells us something, mm-hmm. right? What parts of the game do you like the most? So I work with a guy named Dr. Jason Engerman, who calls himself a playcologist, right? It's all about gamification of learning.
Okay.
And he talks about, instead of us telling kids to just get rid of all their video games and get rid of their digital devices, that would be the same as, somebody telling Henry Ford to get off his Model T and get back on his horse. Okay, well, instead, let's take these things and let's learn how can we use them in learning. And again, my own personal belief is we need a hybrid version of that. It should be part digital, part in person, right? Because you're never going to get away from people's skills, right? We still, even with artificial intelligence coming around the corner, people's skills are probably going to be more important than ever.
Right. It's the one thing you have left.
Well,
Once
robots
AI
are going to do the rote things.
Yeah.
Okay. Which, if you think about it, we always talked about how, well, the Jetsons, we're going to let the robots do this and that, and computers will do this and that. Hey, that should give us theoretically more leisure time, more time to do the things we enjoy doing, right?
Yeah.
Instead, what we tend to do is, okay, we created this hole in our schedule. Let's fill it with some more work.
Right.
It's like, no, let's try to have some balance and just a little bit more integration between our life and our work. And so again, long way of answering your question about, it's, to me, it still comes back to, asking kids critical thinking questions, right? Instead, right now, it's all about rules, procedures, policies, regulations, right? And instead of it being, hey, let's go out and create this. Let's push envelopes. Let's, because I've heard this in my own career. Well, Joe, you just don't fit in any of our boxes. And my thinking, partly because I'm a little bit of a contrarian, I'm a little bit of a feather ruffler. I'm a lot of a feather ruffler, actually. It's 2018. Why do we need boxes? Why do we think that way? Why are we not being creative? Why are we not rewarding that creative thinking? And instead of, and I understand we have to have systems, we have to have processes. True, no doubt. But there's more than one way to build a mousetrap. Not everybody needs the same formula to be successful.
Yeah.
You have these processes in place, right? And I'm not trying to be contradictory here. That's why I called the book Pragmatic Passion. You need both, okay? And then the power of pragmatic passion is you got to get it done, because my tagline is dream big, keep it real, get it done. I hope people will dream big, but there's also a difference between a dream and a fantasy. The fantasy is when I drive down the highway right not too far from here, and I see that big billboard that says dream big, and you know what it's an advertisement for? The Pennsylvania State, the lottery. Okay? That is not a dream. That is a fantasy.
Yeah.
Okay? And to me, I want to go back to let's talk about, well, why is that your dream? Where did it come from? Does it align with your values? What matters to you? What you're interested in? What you're good at? So if we can align those things, that's good. Then it's, we say, all right, let's keep it real. Well, you say you want to be a professional musician. Well, are you good enough? Because here's the difference, right? You can be a good accountant and make a good living. You can be a good marketing person and make a good living. Good engineer, make a good living. You have to be world class as a musician to really make a living.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. You can play in a band, on weekends. And maybe you will hone your craft to become a professional musician sometime. But there's only so many of those people. There's only so many of those spots.
Yeah, that's a tough one, right? Because I just ran into this kid at the grocery store the other day, and he used to date my little sister. So he comes up to me, and we're talking for a minute, and he starts telling me about how he's going to become this musician, and he's in this band. And I'm like, I was interested. I was like, oh, so what's your band's name? He's like, oh, we don't have a name yet. And I'm like, well, who's all in the band? He's like, well, we don't really have that all figured out. And I was like, so are there any songs or anything? He's like, no, we didn't write anything yet. There's no songs. And I was just thinking, like, but he's like, I've seen it. I see it. I can see it in my mind, me on stage. And he's like going into this long, I don't know if he's on drugs or what was going on, but he was just rambling. And I was thinking, like, wow, buddy. And it's a shame because we've all had those thoughts of like, wow, I can picture myself doing this thing, but you don't have any of the steps lined up to actually make the thing happen. So until you actually line those steps up and go through the process piece by piece, the vision's great. It's fantastic. It's just, I look at Arnold Schwarzenegger as always one of my favorite examples. He always talked about that vision. He had a vision of himself standing on stage at Mr. Olympia, or being Mr. Olympia, being Mr. Universe first. Like he saw himself on stage. He could see it. He could see himself being the biggest Hollywood actor in the world. He could see himself being the governor. But then he also went through the steps in the gym 6 hours a day, like grinding away chipping away at that thing that he knew he wanted to get to. It's not good enough just to be able to see it. Everybody can see something wonderful they could possibly attain someday. We can all make that vision in our head, but to like hold on to that vision and then let the universe and yourself put you into place.
Absolutely, and it goes back to luck favors the prepared, right?
Yeah.
You know, if you have honed your craft, I don't care if you're an artist, a musician, you know, you want to be an actor, an actress, a professional athlete. You know, when I look, Rob, I've spent my whole life in sports. Since 2010, the amount of money that is spent on youth sports has gone up 50%. It's a $16 billion a year industry.
Wow.
Okay.
On youth sports.
You've got at the average, you know, youth hockey parent, for instance.
This is like before junior high. Is that what's considered youth sports?
Well, all the way up through high school.
Oh, okay.
All the way up. And you know, so I go back to asking somebody, so your son or daughter doesn't know as a 16-year-old what they're interested in, doesn't know what they want to study, but how much money have you spent, you know, hiring a career counselor, a private guidance counselor,
or sitting down with them yourself and talking to them?
Amen.
You know? Even that piece.
But you won't think twice about sending them to 3 different showcase camps, buying them the best equipment, the best lacrosse stick, the best baseball bat, the best dance shoes, you know, gymnastics lessons, whatever it might be. And again, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that people shouldn't be doing that, because there's benefits from that.
Oh, yeah.
The discipline, the practice, the camaraderie. There are competencies that are learned. Where I have the problem with it is when they think that, you know, their kid's going to be the next, you know, superstar, you know, on stage, in the movies, you know. And if you go and look at the statistics and you realize what the odds are of that happening, you know, it isn't pragmatic, all right? And, you know,
what is the definition of the word pragmatic?
Realistic, practical, something tangible, not theoretical. Okay. So, you know, if you're being pragmatic, it's real.
Yeah.
All right. You're honing something and you've narrowed it down because it's something.
You went through the process.
You went right. Whereas, you know, somebody that just says to you, finding your passion. Okay. Well, you know, how do you do that? How do you find your passion? Oh, there it is, around the corner. Right? No, you got to be pragmatic about it. Okay, It starts with, what are my values? What do I want? What am I interested in? What am I good at? What do my friends think I'm good at?
Yeah.
You know, what is my ambition? What is my work ethic? What is my willpower?
What gives you energy? Like that thing you do when you do it, and you put a lot of work into it, and you still are energized.
Right. So
I can always tell. That's when I know, like, oh well, that was something I need.
It's a feeling of you're passionate about stuff. There's a feeling of exhilaration, right?
Yeah.
It gets back to what you said earlier. You don't even want to go to sleep.
Yeah.
You're in that flow state psychologists talk about where, you know, you look over and go, oh my gosh, it's 2:00 in the morning.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, why is it got to be 2:00 in the morning? I'm not ready to go to bed. You need to, because you got to get your sleep, right? But you're so into what you're doing, right? And okay, but I add the pragmatic piece to that. It still goes back to, can it pay you, you know, so that you can make a living?
Yeah.
Will it pay the bills? You know, and what's wrong with, we don't teach kids that it's okay, you know, so you want to be a novelist. I talk about this in my book. Erica Salo, she was one of my interns. She's an English major, public relations major, tremendous young woman. Okay, what do you want to do? Well, I want to write novels. Okay, you know how hard that is, right? So what her plan was, all right, well, I'm going to get this job in public relations. I'm probably going to have to go work for a corporation. I'll work in their PR department. I'll do the writing, honing my skill, making money, getting medical benefits, practical, pragmatic, right? But in the meantime, my side hustle is I keep working and developing my writing skills. I start writing for a blog. I start doing these things that are going to help me. And then that keeps the dream alive of being a novelist.
Yeah.
Actors and actresses. I write in a book about the Sachs family from up in State College. They were people who, you know, would, do theater. Okay. They were trying to, both be actors and actresses. This is Laura Ann and David Sachs, and they lived in Chicago, and they tried it. They went that route, and what they found was, oh my gosh, so you got a job for 6 months, but you had to be in New York, while the other one was in Chicago, or you got to go to L.A., or okay, I got this gig locally, but it only was for 6 weeks, right? Then the show was over, and oh, by the way, I didn't have benefits. I don't have a regular paycheck, And they start looking around and going, none of our friends are married. They don't have kids. They don't have homes. Like, what's the end game here?
Yeah.
Right? So she becomes a nurse. He ends up being a teacher, goes and gets a PhD, becomes a professor. So while she's being a nurse, he's being a professor, they did summer stock. Okay? To the point where they made enough money in their vocations that they bought the Nittany Theater at the Barn in Boalsburg, and they now produce the shows.
Oh, wow. Now, how many years did it take them to go from that to that?
That's a good question, and without referring to the book, I'm not sure I could answer
Probably
that.
A while.
It took a right. This was a long-term plan, right?
Yeah.
Well, now they're both at the point where they can retire from their jobs. They still own the Nittany Theater at the Barn. They just bought into another place down in Florida in their retirement home, the Villages. So in the winter, they're going to run their theater in Florida. In the summer, they come back and do it. That, to me, is a meaningful, joyful, successful lifestyle.
Yeah.
Right? Their dreams did come true. They never gave up on them.
Yeah.
They just didn't, it's stage of life.
Yeah.
Right? They raised a family. They were able to pay the bills. They had medical benefits, right? So that's where I think too many people miss out, Rob, that they don't understand that. And I go back to like, well, Joe, how can you ask 15, 16, 17-year-olds these questions? Well, I don't expect them to have the absolute answer. It's going to evolve.
And that's the tough part. That's the trick there, is that that's not the answer. It's just getting the ball rolling, getting your brain thinking about it.
Getting you into a mindset of doing that, and then doing what I call a you review. How many people do that? Oh, I get together with my accountant every year to do my taxes. That's not what I'm talking about. That's the you review for maybe your financial part of your life. Not really, because that's just your taxes. But, I'm talking about you. What were your goals? What were your dreams? Did you sit down every 3 months, every 4 months, every 6 months, at least once a year? Put it in your cell phone right now. I'm going to do my you review and go someplace where you're not going to be interrupted by social media, television, people. Sit down and go, okay, I'm going to review these goals, what matters to me, what my values are, tweak them, update them. And now you're able to start saying, and guess what? You're probably going to stay more focused on what it takes to achieve those goals if you do that.
Yeah.
You have a roadmap. Because what happens to too many kids nowadays is they get to be 18 and mom and dad say, okay, what are you doing now? Well, I don't know. And what do? By default, we go to college.
Yep.
Right?
Because you don't want to disappoint mom and dad. You don't want to sit around at the house, so you got to go do something, make it look like you're doing something at least.
Well, I'll go even one better. Mom and dad don't want to have to go to Thanksgiving holidays and say, well, my kid's working at the local restaurant. Right. They're not sure what they want to do because you're embarrassed. So, you know what? Here's the thing. I'm a big proponent of a gap year if you're not ready to go to college. If you really haven't done your due diligence and figured out what you think you might want to do, then don't go. Maybe take an online class.
Yeah.
Go to a community college class. Work. Don't sit at home on the couch and play video games all day or watch another episode of the Kardashians, that sort of thing. That's not the answer. Have a plan. Okay, I'm going to go do job shadowing. I'm going to start reading up on some careers. I'm going to get an assessment done. I'm going to hire a career counselor, whatever it might be. And now to me, those are things that should have happened in high school.
Yeah.
Well, any parent that's listening to this and hears this, I can tell you that unless your kid was assertive and took matters into their own hands and demanded the time of their guidance counselor, that guidance counselor is so overwhelmed right now They're just trying to do the paperwork the state requires. They don't really get to know your kids. They don't know them, not all of them. So why take that chance? You get involved. You get together with your kid and go over those things, because do people think that at 18 we all just have this epiphany and we know what we want to do? No, it's a process. The people.
I wanted to be a rapper when I was 18. I wish somebody would have came to me when I was 18 and been like, Rob, you're an idiot. You're not being a rapper. They could have reviewed me pretty easily and been like, that's probably not the right career move. But you want to be in broadcasting in some way, shape, or form. That's the right route. And adjust it.
Right.
Because there was something there, because I was already doing radio at the time. So it was like, there's a avenue. Maybe you have the right idea, but you need to steer that in the right direction. And it's a shame that people don't, whether it's a teacher, guidance counselor, parent, all along the line. I mean, obviously, a lot of them are too overwhelmed, overworked. Parents are usually too overworked as well to sit down. And I think you can answer this. I'm curious how you would answer this. Like, I think a lot of parents are afraid to sit down and talk to their kids about this stuff because they are not living out their dreams.
Yes.
So they're afraid to admit, like, well, I'm not doing what I want to do. And then they have to have the self-awareness of like, oh, crap. The self-realization, I'm also not doing what I'm passionate about.
Self-awareness. Aristotle, know thyself.
Yeah.
Right? That
is
is
the hardest thing in the world to do.
It is,
sometimes.
to look in the mirror.
And be honest with yourself.
And be honest with the only person that really matters in terms of holding you accountable is that person staring back at you. And guess what? We're human. Get over it. We all make mistakes.
Yeah.
I've lived a flawed life. I know that. There's things I wish I could go back and have a do-over.
Well, that's why it's all worked for you in the end, though, right? That's why the book was written. That's why the Pagola Ice Arena happened. That's why the Sabres job happened, because you stumbled through and figured it out.
You grind.
Yeah.
And you know what? You put yourself in a position to get lucky because you've mastered a craft. You've worked on things. You are passionate about certain things. And there's no doubt in my mind that, everybody has this within them, Rob, and it does not matter. It's never too late and it's never too early to start thinking about these things. And if you haven't up to this point, so what? Even that person that's just recently retired from that job they did for 40 years that they went to, and what Gallup calls the 51% of the people who were just there. Gallup's study shows 30% of people are engaged. You got, another 17, 18, 19% that are disengaged and actually toxic to the workplace. And then you got the 51% of the people who are just there. All right.
And they'll be there their entire career, just being there.
Okay, so now you've retired. And they look back and go, oh, my God, I didn't do anything. Like, right. I just, I was that survivor, right? Okay, so be it. But guess what? At least you survived. You've probably built up a retirement fund. You've got medical benefits.
Yeah.
So now you're 65, 7, whatever it is. Well, so now go after it. Now dream your dream.
Yeah.
It's never too late.
Where does your passion come from for that? Because that's a rare thing to have happen, especially past, I don't know what the age would be. I think for myself, even leaving my job at 33 was really tough, because it's like once you're inundated with a career and this is your profession and you work for somebody, the idea of like going out and doing it on your own is so daunting. It's like, how do I even start that? So for yourself, what's that mindset like? I mean, obviously we're going through it and you're kind of telling us while we're talking, but
I took a dose of my own medicine. I found mentors and coaches.
At what point?
When I was done with the Sabres, I came home and I decided I was going to give this a try on my own, and it was pretty naive, at first. So
you went to the whole Pagola Ice Arena thing happened. You got the job with the Sabres. You went and worked there. You realized the management spot you were at was not for you.
Yeah.
So you reached the peak of where you wanted to be as far as your vision
And
goes.
I was living in Buffalo.
Okay.
My family was still in State College.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So here's a guy that talks about his number one value being family.
And you pulled away from it.
I was lonely. I was not happy with what I was doing. I did not enjoy some of the people I worked with, and it was bad. I mean, I was a mess, quite frankly, and it was the right thing. It was the right thing for me. It was the right thing for.
How old were you at the time when this all happened?
56.
Wow. Okay.
And so it was, okay, now what? Right? So I
You got
decided.
the thing you wanted, and now it's like, well, I don't
now
want
here,
that.
now the good news, again, go back to stage of life. I've retired from Penn State, and I still have access to all the medical benefits.
Yeah.
I still have access to the tuition reduction.
Yeah.
So that was a conscious decision. I don't know that I could have done this without that. I did very well with the Buffalo Sabres, so I was able to sock away a lot of money. And
How long were you with the Sabres for?
I had a 3-year contract.
Okay. So
And
you rode that contract out.
Yes. And so at the end of that, I started writing the book, and I'm going to be a professional. I've always wanted to be a professional speaker, always wanted to write a book. So I started doing that. And I give a talk, and I end up, one of the groups that I spoke to, 2 months later, I end up going to work there. All right? Why? I went to work. I did not do what you've got. I went against, I was at that point where I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to be a professional speaker. And instead, I went for the paycheck.
An opportunity came up because that's what you knew, right?
Right. Well,
and that's what most people would do.
I'm talking to my wife, and you're sitting there going, okay, the steady paycheck versus the, from one month to another. You never know where this is going.
Yeah.
And I did that for 6 months, and it was rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. I was miserable. Again, it finally got to the point where I was, self-awareness. I am really not very good as an administrator. I don't like it. I'm not good at it. Why am I doing it? And then I made that conscious decision. I spoke to several key people in my life and decided it was time for me to go after this other career and go at it. So I had a couple of different people that I met with that quote coached me, and I had to pay for it.
Well, that's the best way. The best coaches you got to pay for.
Paying for. I had an executive coach out of New York City. She was not cheap, but she was really good.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, I had a lot of pushback with her, and she was the one that kind of, was her and a couple other people that helped me say, all right, Joe, this is what you want to do. This is what you're good at.
You had pushback from her in what sense?
Well, when I would go negative, she would beat me up. She wouldn't let me, which is what I needed. Yeah. I needed somebody to say, Joe, quit feeling sorry for yourself.
Yeah.
Joe, quit going negative. Joe, stay focused.
Yeah.
Right? And that was, I didn't realize it at the time how important that was for me.
So important.
But, and it's really, like I said, I've always loved, public speaking. It's, I'd like to think I'm good at it. I'm sure there's other people out there that,
I'd say you're pretty good at it.
Well, I will say this.
Just from having this conversation. I mean, some people just have it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things that, especially when you have the knowledge for the thing you're talking about. I mean, if you asked me to go out and speak, I don't know how great I'd be. But if you asked me to go out and speak on things that I know, I could ramble on for hours.
Right.
With no issue and engage the audience.
With confidence, you'd be engaging. You would be happy.
Yeah.
You feel you're giving value to people.
Value.
And that's where I am. Like, at first I tried to get in, well, I'm going to be this kind of executive coach. What? How can I be a business executive coach? I've never run a business.
Yeah.
I've never been an entrepreneur. Why should I be out there giving people advice on that? Let's go back to what I know about.
Yeah.
I know people. I know how to coach young people and help them figure out what they want to do, what they want to be. I can help build teams. I feel like I'm good at, getting things done, pushing people past the goal line, so to speak. And so that was where I wanted, and that's what gave me the idea to write The Power of Pragmatic Passion. And the book, I got to tell you, it evolved. And I worked with a coach there. I hired Weston Lyon from Plug and Play Publishing in Swickley, Pennsylvania. Okay, and he was referred to me from another young man, Brad Kilmeyer. His story is very similar in a sense to yours. Brad was in financial management, didn't like it. That's what he got his degree in, at college. but he just didn't care for it. And he decided to become a professional youth speaker. And it's what he's passionate about. He wrote a book at the age of 27.
Wow.
And that's what he's doing. Well, I heard him speak. I was blown away by him. I went up to him. I introduced myself, started talking. He and I are now doing programs together. He recommended Weston Lyon to me. Weston was my coach writing the book. And, I had to pay to do that. Well, I've made that money back, then
That's
some.
the thing. You usually make that money back within the first couple clients you have come in, or whatever that looks like. Right. I mean,
Well,
that
exactly.
payment usually pays off.
You get speaking
quickly.
gigs, and people are buying your book, and the next thing you know, it was well worth it. And I owe a lot to both Brad Kilmeyer and to Weston Lyon. I've got another gentleman, Brad Mitchell, that's the CEO of the National Athletic Professional Success Academy, that took me under his wing, and I work with him as a vice president of development for that. We're working with former NFL players, helping them to transition into the real world. And guess where we start at, Rob? What are your values? What are you interested in? What matters to you? Because, again, they see themselves only as football players.
Right.
And that's pretty much what the rest of the world sees them as. What we've realized is, again, go back to it. If you could learn 17 different game plans in a season, learned all that, you basically learned a foreign language, understanding a playbook.
Yeah.
All right. You understand pattern recognition. You understand situational awareness. Blah blah blah. The same things we talked about earlier. You have these competencies within you. We just got to bring them out. Bring them out. And we talk about in NAPSA, we're in the confidence building business. You were not a middle linebacker for the Cincinnati Bengals. You were a high-performing employee in a competitive industry that just happened to work for the National Football League franchise located in Cincinnati.
And talk about a competitive industry. Like, what percentage of football players even get to the NFL, let alone last 2, 3, 4, 5
The
seasons?
average career is 3 years.
It's insane.
And so
it's a point, 0.1% of any player ever makes
that,
it.
Again, that goes back to when
crazy.
When I talk to the parents who I think are living vicariously through their children.
Yeah.
My kid's going to make it. They're going to earn this college scholarships. They're going to go on and play in the pros.
Yeah.
And you start to say, look, maybe that's going to happen, because this kid did it and that kid did it, and hey, there's a local kid here, Sam Lafferty. All right, he made it, and he did it quietly. Sam was very talented, but he worked his tail off. He ends up using his hockey to get an education from Brown. And then his hockey kept developing, and Sam's now playing on a professional contract in Wilkes-Barre for the Baby Penguins. He was, so now I can tell you that Sam's going to make more money over the course of his life using that degree he got from Brown. But in the meantime, he is good enough that he's able to play pro. Okay, that's one kid. How many other kids from around here did that? Right? That's what people don't want to think about.
Yeah.
Right? Is that the odds are not great. You have to be a special talent. You have to have special capabilities, work ethic, etc. And there's always going to be. You look at the kids that are playing minor league baseball, right? If they're lucky to sign a big signing bonus, okay, but then they toil around in the minor leagues, right? How long do you want to do that? Now your body's getting wear and tear on it, especially when you start talking about hockey or football, things like that.
Yeah.
So I could go on and on about the whole sports thing, but I just think it comes back to that pragmatic part. I'm not trying to bust anybody's bubble and dreams, but at some point you got to understand that, Clint Eastwood back in Magnum Force said a man's got to know his limitations. And it actually takes, if you think about it, it does take looking in the mirror, and it takes a certain level of maturity to say, you know what, I'm probably not good enough to be a rapper.
Right.
I'm not good enough to be, dancing with the Rockettes. I'm not good enough, That's okay. You gave it, as long as you gave it your best shot, right? To me, the shame is when somebody has that talent and never utilizes it and, gives up on it because they started believing the accolades, and they quit working at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like you could have, right? When your vision happened, that would be like, well, it happened. I did it. Now I'm going to be this administrative assistant or administrator, and then you're going to despise the rest of your working existence, right?
Yeah,
I mean, because you wouldn't have liked it. You would have had what you wanted, and then it wouldn't have ended up making you happy.
Right.
Because you needed another goal. You needed to set another one. Here's the next level and go there.
Absolutely. And I look at this and go, my gosh, I published a book.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
And talk about,
right?
like, people talk about books, and that's one of the best, like, lead magnets you can have, right? Because
Right.
this thing, you can refer back to it in so many different ways and shapes and forms, and it's that thing, that rock there that proves I did this, right? And I have, I mean, anybody could write a book technically, but when you have all the years put in that you do, and you put this thing together.
Well, and I appreciate that
powerful.
you said that, because, there are people, I see it all the time. There's some people that are out there, they're 21, 22, 23 years old, and they're writing a book about, certain things, and you just shake your head and go, they haven't even done anything yet.
Right.
They haven't lived anything. How are you going to get advice from them?
Yeah.
Right?
When it comes, there's a few fields, like it's social media, right?
Right.
I mean, if you're 26 writing a book on social media and you've been in it for 5-10 years, you probably have a lot more knowledge than a lot of people do, because it's so new. It's
you're
such
right. There's always exceptions, right?
Yeah.
But remember,
But for the most part,
I hear these kids talk about ninja in the esports world, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to be the next ninja. And then you start saying, you do understand there's like, a dozen of them in the world that make that kind of money, right? I'm just saying, go back, keep it real, right? And then go get it done. Okay, you want to be ninja? Then you better have, let's face it, to a certain extent, that kid's got certain hand-eye coordination skills.
Oh, yeah.
And he's got a brain that allows him to process things. No, not everybody has that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so maybe you're not.
It's just like Shaquille O'Neal. Like, not everybody can be that size.
No.
And with him, there's something going on in his brain. Not everybody can do what he does. The dexterity.
But he's to me, he should be the model, one of the model, because not only was he a great athlete, he's turned into a great business person, right? So that's what happens to so many of these professional athletes.
Because he's in his pocket. I mean, obviously he's made to do that thing.
Yeah.
That's his thing.
Right.
When you say about video games, it's a really good point, because, you could dissect somebody who loves playing video games and figure out who they are through what they like about that. And I've never thought about it that way. That's a really good way of breaking it down, because every kid loves video games.
Before anybody gets, says, oh, this guy's, just so negative, about certain things. No, look, people forget this. When Microsoft first started hiring, and IBM hiring people to do coding, do you know who they hired in a lot of cases? Musicians.
Oh, yeah?
Because they understood patterns. Okay, right? So I always talk about, all right, if you're passionate about music, go for it, right? You want to do what you got to do. But if it doesn't work out, don't go, okay, I'm a failure. What do I do now? I guess I'm going to go wait tables at the local restaurant. No. If you could do that, you can do all these other things.
Yeah.
Right? It's no different. Like I spoke to a Penn State grad. I saw him at the Pitt game. Hey, so cool. What'd you get your degree in? Aerospace engineering. Whoa, you working for like Lockheed Martin or Boeing or something? Nah, I haven't been able to find a job in the industry. I'm a manager at another business, and I'm looking at him and going, dude, if you're smart enough to be an aerospace engineer, just pivot a little bit,
right?
Tweak it a little bit. Maybe go back and take a couple of classes in civil or mechanical or something. You're a smart kid, right? Why would you sell your just because you can't get a job right now at this moment in your business? To me, don't waste your skill. Don't waste it. That's the kind of thing that you can learn by working with a coach.
Yes,
the coach is going to help you figure out. All right, just no different than what I went through, and. Now I have this purpose again. Now I have this passion. It came from the vision. And, so here we got pragmaticpassion.com. By the way, if you want to buy the book, go to Pragmatic. It is available on Amazon, but I'd prefer you buy it from me, pragmaticpassion.com, and I'll personalize it. If you go on there, I'll personalize it. And, it's a dream come true for me now that, I'm a published author. I'm doing public speaking. I'm helping people, which is, really what motivates me. I've always believed, and I learned this from my father, that somebody has to care. And, again, I can't worry about the mistakes I've made. I can't worry about the fact that things might not have worked out the way I wanted them to in a previous job. I've got to go forward. And that's, how do you I talk about 3 C's. You got to have commitment, you got to have confidence, and you have to have courage. All right. So you got to make a commitment to something. Well, you better know what that is. That gets back to values, what matters to you. You get that confidence. The question, people talk about why. Simon Sinek, right? Why? Most people want to know how. How? Okay, well, here's how you get confidence. Education. You get online, you teach yourself, you hire a coach, they train you, you go to college, you go to vocational school.
And then you get your hands dirty.
So now you've experienced it, now you've got the confidence. But even with that, there's people that still, for some reason, they hold themselves back or they won't go after a particular job. Now you got to have the courage to get it done. All right, you develop that courage by trying to get out there, go apply for some jobs that are, maybe a little bit out of the reach. Get the experience. The more you interview, as long as you go in knowing that, look, there's going to be some no's out there. So what? Hey, baseball players make millions of dollars for hitting the ball 3 out of 10 times, right? The rejection's okay.
Yeah.
All right. It just means, the guy that founded, what's his name? Starbucks. I always forget his last name, but
I don't know his name.
248 banks he went to before somebody finally said, okay, we'll take a chance on you with this idea. 204, that's perseverance.
Well,
right?
was it who invented the light bulb? Was it Edison?
Edison.
Edison,
Yeah.
10,000 experiments before he perfected it.
What did he say? I just found out 9,999 ways not to build a light bulb. Right?
The guy who created KFC. I can't think of his.
Colonel Sanders.
Was it? Yeah. What was his first name? Whatever. Doesn't matter.
Right.
But yeah. I mean, he failed. He was like in his 60s or 70s
Yep.
until he figured out that formula and actually got it right.
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, maybe he was in the wrong field for a long time and finally. Piece it together later on in life.
Things, you can't win the game if you're not in the game.
Yeah.
Right? So you got to figure out, well, what field am I supposed to be on? what time, what stage of life?
Yeah.
These things matter. And I still go back to, I read a book long ago by Don Shulo and Ken Blanchard. Ken Blanchard wrote The 1 Minute Manager, which is still one of the best books and business books ever. Those two combined and wrote a book called Everyone Needs a Coach. And I've never forgotten that again, when it's at the margin, you're not sure which way to go because it can lead to depression. It can lead to anxiety. Go ask for help. Go get some help. All right.
Absolutely.
And remember that it's no different than anything in life.
And that's okay. People are afraid to admit, I mean, even me in my own personal life, there's certain things where I look at it and I'm like, I know I need to do that. I need to ask somebody for help. But it's like, you got to be humble, right? And being able to
check your
go out
ego.
and ask the question.
Check your ego at the door. And, don't ever stop learning, right? Don't ever stop. I think the only bad question is the one that's not asked.
Yes.
Right? I mean, so you make a fool out of yourself. Who cares?
Yeah.
You ask a question, it might change your life. So some people over here laugh at you a little bit. Well, what happens if the answer you got gives you that aha moment, right? And turns your life around? Who cares what they think? Those people, you want to be around them anyway.
Yeah.
Right? To me, what happens with a lot of people, and particularly true with teenagers, they end up in these toxic friendships, right? They end up hanging out with kids that take them down the wrong path because it's easier to follow that person where I don't have to put myself out there, where I'm just going along with the gang, than it is to say, you know what, guys, gals, this isn't right. We shouldn't be doing this, right? This isn't benefiting me. It's not adding value to my life. It's taken me the wrong direction. Hey, I can still be your acquaintance. I still get along with you, but I'm going to go hang out over here because these are people that I'm going to surround myself with. These people who are going to push me to be better than I ever thought I could be, who are going to help me get there, who genuinely care. You always want to be around those people that have a servant leadership mentality. They put other people first. They're other-centered. And that's like, for me, if this ends up making me a lot of money, woo, great. If it makes me enough money to pay the bills, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Eventually, when I do get to retire, I'd like to be able to do some of this pro bono. I want to go to certain schools and places where maybe they don't have the resources or the budget to have somebody like me come in and speak. And if I can go in there and inspire some young person and it changes their life and it opens up opportunities to them that they previously didn't think about, then I'll feel like I've lived a pretty purposeful and meaningful life and bring joy to other people. I'm okay with that, Rob.
That's powerful. That's exactly how it should be.
You're
That's
right.
the way to move forward with life. This has been awesome. I love this conversation. If anybody wants to get the book, you already said pragmaticpassion.com.
Yep, pragmaticpassion.com.
They can also buy it on Amazon, but they should buy it from the website.
Yeah, I'd prefer they do that. Yeah, you can go on and order it there, and I'll personalize it. I'll sign it and ship it off to you. But it's been a blast.
What about
this.
like your social media platforms and stuff? They can find you on there. Are you active on social media?
At Coach Joe is my Facebook, I believe, and Instagram, and I do have Twitter. Yep. So I'm learning. Cool. I'm not great at that. I'm still the old dog learning the new
That's
tricks.
the stuff you got to outsource sometimes, right? When it
yeah.
gets,
Well, I have this technologically, expert son of mine in California. I got to get him to, try to help me. He's trying.
Right.
Dad's sometimes not always the most patient learner, but as my daughter says, Dad, sometimes you got to take a lesson from your own book. And she's right. That's the point. I said, one of the reasons I wrote this was because I want other people to avoid some of the mistakes I made along the way. And I don't know anybody that's got all the answers, Rob.
Nobody does.
Constantly. I subscribe to a bunch of people. I get stuff from Walk the Talk, Brian Tracy, Jordan Peterson, Jack Canfield. Here's the thing to me that bothers me about some young people. They wake up in the morning and the first thing they do is put on all this music that's negative, or they turn on the news and it's all what? Negative, right? It's all bad. And that's the first thing you hear and see when you wake up.
Yeah.
How about being purposeful and intentional and listen to a positive podcast, a 3-minute goal cast, right? Or some positive music, that sort of thing, right?
It's like people don't realize, and I didn't for a long time, that might be the most important thing. You got to start your day off right.
Yeah.
Tony Robbins always talks about priming. You have to prime. Like he primes the first 20 minutes to an hour of his day is spent just getting himself prepared for the day. Tim Ferriss says the same thing. Like he always is waking up, doing a certain. I mean, my morning routine it's a regimen. Like sometimes it's like 40 minutes, sometimes it's an hour. But if I don't do those things, like you said, I get up, I stretch, I listen to some sort of positive podcast or music, and just get my mind where it should be. Because I usually wake up kind of crabby, as a lot of people do. If you wake up crabby and then you start taking in negative information right away, that's a bad start off to the day.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I think people, and the other thing is people waste an awful lot of their time. They'll talk about, I don't have time to learn this, or I don't have time to learn that. And I say, you know what, don't give me that. I'll bet you if we sat down and we really journaled where you're spending every minute of your day, we can find time for you to sneak in an online class or a certificate program or a webinar, whatever it might be. There's no excuse to me these days for not being able to learn something that you want that's going to help you get to your dreams, to achieve your goals. You have to be intentional. Hey, how many times are you sitting in the doctor's office, right? What are you going to do? Watch the whatever channel they have on, or pick up one of those magazines they have on? Plug in your earphones and listen to a TED Talk.
Yeah.
Listen to a Goalcast. To me, that's you just have to be intentional about those things.
Yeah.
And you're going to learn and to use your critical thinking skills. Just because somebody says something, I like the fact that I'll hear something from a Tony Robbins, from a Gary Vaynerchuk, from a Jack Canfield, and say, well, I don't agree with that. All right. I'm at that level where I have the confidence to say, well, okay, that works for them. That wouldn't work for me. Doesn't mean they're wrong. I just have to apply my filter, use my critical thinking skills, and say that I just know me, and that particular path won't work for me. I'm going to try this one over here.
Yeah.
But do something.
Yeah. Do something. And when it doesn't work, experiment, switch it up, and do something else.
Amen.
Try
And
different
you know,
ways.
we should teach people, you know, that it's okay to fail. You know, and you know, unfortunately,
That's the
too
school
often,
system sets it up like you
it's-
fail, you
we
fail.
all know that the school system doesn't work the way it is, but nobody has the courage to fix it.
Right.
Right?
It's one of those.
Nobody wants to change it.
It's
And
like government, or it's so big, it's almost immovable, right? And that's why I look at online education, like Masterclass Online or Skillshare or Udemy or Teachable, like these platforms where you can go and get something that you'd pay maybe $500 for online that you'd pay $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 for in a college situation, and you probably get better information, more current information from the online version than you would the college version, especially when it comes to anything online or digital. And that's crazy, but that's just the way things are.
Well, I got to tell you, to me, this is the next big potential financial crisis is what's going on with student debt.
Oh, no doubt.
And that's why, to me, if you don't have the money, you know, to go $100,000 in debt to get a sociology degree makes no sense to me.
No,
Okay.
it's ridiculous.
You have to be smarter than that. Okay, you're either going to the wrong school, you know. And the other thing that people don't understand is what's the matter if you're one of those people that doesn't have the money. You know, of course somebody's going to give you the free, you know, loan. You know, that you think it's free till you got to go pay it, and you're going to end up all this debt. Why not? Okay, I'll work part-time. I'll start taking some classes at a junior college or at a Penn State branch campus, for instance.
Yeah.
Right. Online, whatever. Build up enough credits. Make sure they're transferable. All right. You're paying a third of what you would have paid to go to a certain school, and then you transfer when you've actually grown up, matured, and said, okay, now I'm ready to go. Now I'm emotionally, mentally, and physically ready to go. Parents, sometimes they're their own kids' worst enemies. We know that 49%, according to a Harvard study, of kids that start out in a 4-year degree never finish. That tells me between that and all the student debt we have, we're doing something wrong. And it's a shame, and I'm devoted to try to correct that, to help kids. There's kids that shouldn't be going to college, and they're only going because mom and dad's egos. They should be going to a trade school. Maybe they should be going to the military. Maybe they should just be getting a job and making some money until they grow up a little bit and figure it out.
Yeah.
And so what if you figure out at 24 instead of 18? It's okay. Better to do that than be $200,000 of debt, graduate and go, oh crap, I got a degree that doesn't get me a job.
Yeah. Then you get a job at Sheets or something and do something that has nothing to do with your major.
And
Yeah, it's crazy.
I know we got to end because you and I, we're kindred spirits. We could talk forever.
I honestly could. Well, Joe, I'm glad you're doing this. It's amazing, especially for our area, especially for Central Pennsylvania. I mean, I know State College is a little more forward thinking than Altoona and the areas around here, but around here we really need stuff like this because there's a lot of people who are wayward, they don't know what they're doing, and they don't know how to do what they want to do, or they don't even know what that is, the first step. So I feel like this is really important for anywhere or in the world, but especially for areas like this. So thank you so much.
You bet. Thanks for having me, Rob. I really appreciate it. This was fun.
My man, Joe. Wow, what an awesome conversation. That was amazing. That's inspirational. I hope that you got something out of it. I know I did from just having the conversation with Joe, being able to sit across from him, but hopefully you pulled something out of that for yourself. Get that book, The Power of Pragmatic Passion, 7 Common Sense Principles for Achieving Personal and Professional Success. Man, I want to start reading it right now, so I got to wrap this thing up. Shout out to my dude DDP, Diamond Dallas Page, DDP Yoga, life-changing workouts. You know, yoga might be something, if you're a guy you scoff at, please don't. Please give it a shot, especially when it comes to Diamond Dallas Page. DDP Yoga is something that's changed my body. It's made me so strong. I actually did it earlier before this podcast. I got a session in, 40 minutes. My body felt amazing. And you know, like after you lift or like, you know, do heavy cardio or something like that, sometimes you're done working out and you're wiped out, you're exhausted, you can't do anything else. Not DDP, man. It re-energizes you, it recharges your body. I'm telling you, especially guys, do it. Try yoga. Do DDP yoga. If you don't want to do, in air quotes, girls yoga, you know, I think all yoga's tough, but if you really want to start somewhere that's for men, DDP yoga is the spot. Do that. Shout out to Joe Battista. Thank you so much for the amazing conversation, and I want to get him back on here. Get that book and Zebras. Thank you for listening. As always, all the music on the podcast by my man Jake Over. If you need a good dude, awesome music producer, look for him on Facebook, Jake Over. And if you want to help the podcast out, patreon.com/Rob Z Radio. We'll talk to you next time. Thank you very much.
This is Rob Z Radio.